Hello, and welcome to my very new show, VHS Era. Due to the SAG and WGA strikes, we are still putting I helped make that on hold.
Mm.
But while the strikes are going on, I've decided to start a new show that asks the question: did you grow up in the era of VHS? Remember the trailers, the commercials, and anything else that popped up before the movie? Well, if you're like me, you sure do. And today we are going to be starting this new series by looking at nostalgic trailers and commercials before the show. So it's kind of like a let's watch podcast thing.
Okay.
And to do that, we will be looking at the trailers for one of the three movies that made Jim Carrey a star. I am talking about The Mask. And because we're dealing with a movie that made a comedian a household name,
Mhm.
I just thought it would make perfect sense to bring a comedian on the show to look at The Mask's VHS opening. Well, he's not just a comedian, but that's just one of many things he does. I am talking to Sherwin XL. Thanks for coming on, Sherwin.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. I can't wait. And Jim, that the Mask movie was one of my favorites growing up. Aside from Robin Williams playing Popeye, The Mask is like right next to it.
Yeah, how old were you when The Mask came out?
I'm not telling.
Okay. All
Let's
right.
just say I'm a '70s baby, and that's enough.
Okay.
I'll
All
tell you
right.
one day, though.
Okay. So did you actually see The Mask in theaters?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Oh, back when it was brand new. I was in diapers when
You're
that
in diapers. I'll
yeah.
tell you what. I'll tell you what. The only movie that I ever saw, aside from The Mask,
Mhm.
I got to see it in a drive-in theater. I got to see Star Wars in a drive-in theater.
Cool.
My dad, took, my dad took the family. I was living in. I think I had just come back from Trinidad and Tobago from doing school
Mhm.
because I was a kid, like about 4 or 5, somewhere in there.
Mhm.
And my dad took us to a drive-in to go see Star Wars. So,
Mhm.
got into that and just got to love movies from there. And then seeing The Mask in the theaters, the anticipation when you see the trailers, they're pretty cool. And then when you go see the movie, there's more trailers coming in. So this is going to be, a little, a visual time capsule going back to when
Mhm.
it got you. Okay, oh man, I remember that, and
Mhm.
the anticipation of the movie, and if the movie like hit a home run because The Mask, Ace
Mhm.
Ventura, and a couple other movies that he did. But The Mask was like it was cartoonish. It reminded everybody like of Looney Tunes, like Bugs Bunny and everything.
Mhm.
So they did a great job with it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to travel back and go back to to the beginning of it. And
Mhm.
I think the other movie was Liar Liar that put him on the map too.
Yeah, that movie
Definitely
as
those
well.
three. Yeah,
That actually came out like a few years after like the big three movies that
yeah,
started his career. It was like The Mask, Ace Ventura, and Dumb
definitely. Yep.
and as I also remember,
Oh, Dumb and Dumber too. Yeah,
yeah.
Dumb and Dumber, Liar Liar. But I think, yeah, I think though, funny wise, I think only Liar Liar and Ace Ventura kind of goes there with The Mask, but
Mhm.
Liar Liar had everybody in stitches in the theater,
Mhm.
big time. Because especially when you go to live theater, especially if it's comedy, uh, when you're sitting there and you're laughing so hard you couldn't even hear, like you had to wait until you got home
Mm-hmm.
to actually listen to what he said in certain parts, especially that part when he was insulting the CEO chairman, when he's like and you and like everybody's like laughing and laughing, and he said something to the girl, and he comes out of then he comes into the building, out of the room, and he's like because he had to tell the truth,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody thought he was doing a roast, so that kind of saved him,
Mm-hmm.
you know. He was like, figuratively speaking,
Yeah.
he's like, I love a good roast, like Joe Johnson. So it was really funny. It was
Yeah.
really funny, and then the mask alone, and then even the dog got in on it, so and then the bad guy, which I keep forgetting that actor's name, but I actually saw that guy on a New York City train before, and I was like, "Isn't that the guy? Yeah, that's the guy from the mask, like
It
the
was
bad dude."
Peter Reigert, I believe.
Peter, yeah, I've seen that guy. There's been a couple of people. I
Oh,
like.
yeah.
I've met him,
Mm-hmm.
Rosario Dawson,
Mm-hmm.
just by chance on the train, and the Last Dragon's Timok. I
Mm-hmm.
got to yeah, those are like 3 stars I've actually seen on the train.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Actually, funny enough, when I was on the train
Hmm.
once, I ran into a woman that I thought looked like Sarah Jessica Parker. So I walked up to her. I asked, "Hey, are you just Sarah Jessica Parker?" And sure enough, it was. And like
Oh wow,
no one even recognized her until I was just like, "Wait, are you Sarah Jessica Parker?" And then a guy who's like a fan of hers just started chatting her up and talking about, I think, Sex in the City or something.
wow, that's on the train.
Yeah.
I think the only other person I saw on the street, which really blew my mind, was Sanaa Lathan. She was like
Uh,
standing right next to me on the phone. I was just standing there waiting to go across the street because it was on West 54th, no, West 50th.
mhm,
I don't know if you know the city too much. West 50th and Broadway, there's like a McDonald's up the
mhm.
block, West 51st or something like that. I'm standing there on the block waiting for the light to change, and I'm like, looking for the traffic, and I'm looking to the side. And she's like standing right here, and I'm just like, and I was like, Sonali. Then I'm like,
Mhm.
so I was
So,
like,
mhm.
so I tapped on her shoulder. And she's like, yes. I was like, excuse me, you Sonali then? She's like, yes. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, yo, I love your work. Gave her a hug. And I was like, what are you doing out here like this? It's like, aren't you afraid to get mobbed? It's like, oh, she's like, New Yorkers don't care. It's a California thing.
Yeah,
So,
that's
and
definitely
Gilbert
true.
Gottfried.
I've been
Yeah, and I saw Gilbert Gottfried on West 23rd Street. He had
mhm,
a big book bag on, rested, so he was awesome. He was
mhm.
like, I said, yo, Gilbert. He's like, shh. He's like, I'm trying to get some peace here. So yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, I've run into like plenty of celebrities on the street in New York.
Yeah.
My dad and his husband have. They said that they used to run into Philip Seymour Hoffman before he died, for
Mm-hmm.
example. But yeah, let's get back to the mask.
Okie dokie.
Let's get this started.
Let's see. Here we go.
All right.
New Line Cinema. Home video.
Mhm. Yeah, uh I actually saw a meme on Facebook. It was like, when you see this logo, what do you think?
When I see this logo, when I first saw it back in the days, like, oh, that's interesting. That's new looking.
Hmm.
I was like, so what's next?
Yeah, I think it's more like, what movies do you see? Like, what movies do
Mhm.
you think of?
Well, for right now, The Mask.
Yeah, they've done like plenty of iconic movies, Mask, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday,
Mhm.
um,
Oh, that's a top
Austin
comedy,
Powers.
Friday.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, but let's get this started. So that's a bit of a creepy logo to start off with, the white with the black and the creepy music.
in a little creepy White House, looking like an asylum. The bell, ding.
Yeah,
Welcome to your last home ever.
yeah, yeah. The reason they had this is because Ted Turner like owned Warner Brothers, which owns New Line, but I have no idea whose idea it was to make this the logo.
This, this guy had his hands in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Turner, WCW
Mm-hmm.
owner.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
As bouncing as The Mask, and as entertaining as The Mask, it's the soundtrack to The Mask, with music from Escape, Tony, Harry Connick Jr., and Jim Carrey singing Cuban Pete.
They call me Cuban Pete. I'm the king of the rumba beat.
The soundtrack to The Mask. Once you put it on, you'll never take it off.
Wow, see ya.
There you go, son. Now get out of here. You're bothering.
Yeah, back in the 90s,
And you know, a lot of people. Let me just say something to you real quick. When he says "Get out of here, kid, you're bothering me," who do you think he sounds like?
like some 30s gangster.
Wrong. Everybody makes that mistake. When he says "Get out of here, kid, you're bothering me," he kind of says it like Edward G. Robinson, but no, the person that says that, W.C. Fields.
Oh, okay.
He used to say, "Get out of here, kid, you're bothering me."
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people make that mistake. I always tell, like, a lot of other comedians make that mistake because it's like when it comes to certain like comedians, if you hear somebody say "I cha," people would think they think it's Popeye. They're like, no, it's not Popeye. That's not Popeye. That's my man Jimmy Durante.
You mean W.C. Fields?
No, Jimmy Durante goes cha.
Oh, right. Duh. But yeah, speaking of just that commercial in general, like, that was just a thing. Like, movies have soundtracks today, but now it seems like it's more like songs from different periods.
Yeah.
And back in the 90s, it was more like songs that were also from the 90s and were
I think one of the last, there was a movie that Nicolas Cage did that the Google Dolls did a song to called Iris. I think that was one of the last songs that were really emotionally connected with the movie, whether it was something fun or something romantic, or a heart-wrenching song where you're trying to tell a woman you love her, or vice versa, a woman that you love the guy. You know, 'cause, you have what's that song? "Take My Breath Away," which I believe it was on Top Gun, right? So, and then "Highway to the Danger Zone," and songs that really touched you, or "Footloose." So it's like songs really connected with the movie and connected with the emotion of the moment in the film. So these days, not as much, but I think some people are trying to get back to that.
Yeah, like I know
I hope they do.
I know Lady Gaga did a song for Top Gun Maverick. But I was just saying, like, back in the 90s, because like, movie soundtracks were so popular, they always did these like commercials before the movie, for buy the soundtrack to our movie. Though funnily enough, what's funny here is I guess there weren't enough like songs by other musicians. So at the end they just go, "Oh yeah, and Cuban Pete, the Jim Carrey cover from that's in the movie that he just sings himself."
But that gets your attention. It's like you have Escape, you have Boyz II Men, you have Harry Connick Jr. Like, okay, these are musicians, but Jim is singing. Oh, I have to see this. I have to see this. And he's in the mask, and then you see him. The first thing you see is him with the rubber face, which is something that he always did anyway. But they over exaggerate, like with him with the eyes and everything, which is definitely the Hanna-Barbera, Tex Avery type thing from way back when. So it's automatically cartoon lovers would want to go see it. Children would want to go see it because it wasn't anything too bad. I think what was the rating on that? It was PG-13.
Yeah.
So this was one of those barrier movies where it's right there on the cusp of mom, dad, and the kids could go and sit down and watch this film.
Mhm.
which was very important. You know, my mentor, rest his soul, he made a character named Pop Dirtyfoots, and this was something that he wanted to create. That, hey, I'm going to talk like an old guy who knows everything, but you can sit down and talk to the parents, but the children will also get some wisdom from the character.
Mhm.
Or in this case with the mask, the parents got to see something brand new, but memorable from cartoon characters of yesterday,
Mhm.
and then the kids will see something very funny and be introduced to something they've never seen before.
Mhm.
So it worked out very, very well. And then of course Jim Carrey,
Mhm.
great actor, great stand-up comic, and he's always been very physical, you
Mhm.
know.
What is it about Pop Secret? How come that rich, buttery aroma seems to drift a little too far? Those kernels pop a little too loudly. And why, when you pop up every big, fluffy bag full, people pop up too? Pop Secret popcorn, so irresistible you can't keep it a secret.
The
Dad wanted
commercial.
everything to himself. Papa
Yeah.
wanted everything to himself. And once again, family situation, which is smart. That'll probably,
Mhm.
psychologically, you're like, you know what? I should go take the family to go see this movie, The Mask. And if they have popcorn, you're gonna get popcorn. And if the theaters has the Top Secret, that's money for Top Secret.
Mhm.
And here comes one of my favorite cartoon characters when I was growing up,
Yeah.
Space Ghost, but doing something absolutely different.
Only 10 seconds. I only get 10 seconds to tell people about my interview with Jim Carrey after the movie.
Actually, did you watch Space Ghost Coast to Coast when it came out?
So you know what? I watched it probably like afterwards because
Mhm.
I was such a big fan of the cartoon. Like, that's not Space Ghost voice.
Mhm.
I'm like, who's this imposter? But after a while, I started watching some of them, and I watched the interview, Jim Carrey and everything, and the creator of the mask. But after a while, it's like, sometimes it's just like, maybe the guy that used to do his voiceover, maybe he's no longer around, or they couldn't find somebody that could do the actual voice. And sometimes some guys, when they got the money, they do what they want to do. But I was just happy to see a character that I used to. Just like how I think they did Harvey Harvey Birdman now.
Yeah.
So yeah, some of the old characters that some of us that were born anybody who was born like 50s, 60s, 70s, and late 80s, there are certain cartoon characters that we look at and like, oh, I remember that cartoon character. Because if you look at like Johnny Bravo is
Mhm.
such a ripoff of Elvis, except he has the blonde hair, but he has that little, and if you look at the Simpsons scientists, that's Jerry Lewis's Nutty Professor, the original Nutty Professor. Not the Eddie Murphy's Nutty Professor, but a lot of people don't know this. That actually, um, Eddie Murphy got help from Jerry Lewis to work on the Nutty Professor. If you look
Yeah.
in the credits, his name is in there.
Yeah, he's the producer on the first one, but he wasn't the producer for the sequel, The Clumps. But I will
Mhm.
say that
It
back to
was nice to see that, though. It was so nice to see that.
Mhm.
Because Jerry, if you look at people like Adam Sandler.
Mhm.
Uh, Adam Sandler kind of reminds me of Jerry Lewis a little bit.
Mhm.
And it's like, Jerry was awesome, man. And then, he always used to carry his teeth and put it in his mouth and
Mhm.
go on TV shows and just always looking for a laugh. But he was such a serious person behind the scenes, but
Mhm.
he also had a ridiculous um amount of brains behind the scenes, because a lot of people didn't realize that he's the one that created the film where you can actually see the cinematography behind the scenes when you're acting, and you can see the camera while you're moving. He's the forefather of that.
Cool. But I will
Yeah.
say back to Space Ghost,
Mm.
I was like really young. I was a baby when
Yeah.
Space Ghost Coast to Coast came out. But I will say that I am vaguely familiar with like Harvey Birdman, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
Brack Show, C Lab 2021. Like I didn't watch much of them, but I remember like as a kid learning, as a kid when Adult Swim was first premiering.
Yeah.
I remember these shows at least coming on. But yeah,
There's a lot of nostalgic stuff that you could rewatch on YouTube, because there are a lot of enthusiasts of cartoon nostalgia out here, which I had no idea. There's like a bunch of hardcore folks out here that really love the nostalgic G.I. Joe, or what's that other show my sister used to watch? Gem, and Thundercats, He-Man, and on and on and on, which, they did a He-Man remake. Some people didn't like it. Some were like, okay. But, it depends on how somebody goes about it. Because if you really love it, it's just going to come out properly. Just like some of these folks didn't like the way Star Wars came back. Some people liked it. A lot of people didn't. And, it just goes to show you, once somebody really, like, Jon Favreau, those guys really love Star Wars. So, they're going to put their time and heart into what is going on, because characters that people grew up on, I think sometimes some folks forget, well, the people that like this, they're damn near dead, or they don't watch TV anymore. So screw it. We're going to do what we want to do. And a lot of times they shouldn't do that. If you try to keep to the closest essence that you can, unless you're creating something totally new, I think it'll help. It'll really help, because you look at the success of The Mandalorian. If that doesn't tell you something, it's fan-made material, But this, like I said, this Space Ghost, after a while, took a while for me to grow on to me, because always used to watch the Galaxy Trio, the Herculoids, and Thundar the Barbarian, and all that good stuff that I grew up on. So it was, and what was it, Dino Boy, and a bunch of other things. I had a bunch of crazy cartoons that and puppetry, like Sigmund the Sea Monster. I used to see like a lot of reruns growing up, like Batman, because Space Ghost basically reminds you of like Adam West type cartoon Batman,
Yeah, I will say that with, Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, I think it was sort of like a parody for like people who had grown up on Space Ghost, rather than like something like The Mandalorian, which is supposed to be like a continuation of the world. So, with The Mask, because it's actually kind of a smart move to have like promote Space Ghost before the VHS opening of The Mask, because seen as it is supposed to be for a PG-13 crowd, as is Space Ghost Coast to Coast, it's like they're taking a show that Warner's is taking a show that's aimed at a similar demographic as The Mask, and using it to promote the movie.
Yeah. Like I said, the parents, they see something familiar, and of course, Space Ghost is basically something that parents have seen. And of course, around that time, you had like Johnny Carson out there, so they're doing a parody of like a talk show host, but solo, which he had trying to be like Ed McMahon in the corner or whatever, except he wasn't funny. He like, ha ha, yes, he wasn't doing that stuff. But it would turn out good for them, because one, anybody who's nostalgic with Space Ghost and like the Johnny Carson type shows, talk show host thing, they were like, oh, let me tune into this. This is something different with somebody that I recognize. So when the kids are sleeping, maybe I'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
If not during the week, on the weekends, Coming soon to a motion picture review.
What are we gonna do?
I got an idea.
Go faster!
Dumb, a person lacking mental power.
What's her last name? I'll look it up.
Starts with an S. Slappy. No. Swappy.
Maybe it's on the briefcase. Look on the...
Oh, yeah! It's right here. Samsonite. I was way off.
Idiot, an adult mentally inferior to a child of 3.
Skis, huh?
That's right.
The years?
Uh-huh.
Both of them?
Yeah.
Cool.
Stupid. A person below normal intelligence.
Hey, want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
If they each had half a brain, they'd still only have half a brain.
Oh, look, Frost.
Jim Carrey.
Hold that plane!
Sir, you can't go in there.
It's okay! I'm the limo driver!
Jeff Daniels.
Oh, geez, look at the butt on that.
Yeah. He must work out.
Dumb and Dumber. For these guys, every day is a no-brainer.
So it's smart that they have another Jim Carrey movie before this one, because it's like the people who bought the VHS have probably already seen the movie, so they probably already like Jim Carrey, and therefore they want to sell another movie that Jim Carrey is on.
And this time it's a buddy comedy.
Yeah. Yeah, and the trailer's smart. It doesn't, because it just focuses on the characters of Lloyd and Harry and just their chemistry. It doesn't tell too much about the movie, just enough to sell what is like the main point, which is Lloyd and Harry. I mean, it doesn't really say anything about the plot, but like, does it really need to?
Yeah, the movie like this, once again, for parents, or just adults, period, who were old enough to be like, okay, this reminds me of a buddy movie like a Abbott and Costello or a Bing Crosby and Bob Hope film, or something with like how the Marx Brothers did. So this is something like something new with a fairly old school-esque thing to look at, or better yet, a classic buddy comedy. And people would probably like to see something like this, which then later on you see more buddy films coming out, like with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker.
Yeah, the only thing I'm a little confused about is it says at the beginning, coming to a theater near you, but if this title is right, if the title of the YouTube video for this is right, The Mask came out in 1995. Dumb and Dumber came out in 1994 with The Mask, I believe. Let me just do some research on that.
So maybe they postponed it in certain areas.
Maybe. Let's see. Mask 1994 VHS release dates. Okay. Oh, okay. So The Mask was released on VHS and Laserdisc on January 18th, 1995. Now, when did Dumb and Dumber come out? December 6th, 1994. So it came out. So either it was postponed in some areas.
Yeah.
Or maybe
it happens. Because I'll tell you, because like for instance, when I read Bernie Mac's book called Maybe You Never Cry Again, in the book, Bernie Mac said he had a TV show called Midnight Mac. And I'd never seen Midnight Mac here on HBO here in New York ever. They only played it in Chicago. But it's actually on YouTube right now. It's playing on YouTube. So I got to see it after I found out when I read his book. If I didn't read his book, I probably would have never known that he had a TV show called Midnight Mac, where he had like a band. He had lady dancers called the Macaronis, which was really cool. And sometimes things get postponed or things get played in certain areas and certain regions, and we'll see something and then somebody else will see something totally different. It's just kind of like how if you see something in Espanol, maybe if you, I guess maybe if you look at maybe whenever the release for like Puerto Rico, maybe the dates might be different. Who knows?
Yeah,
It's a possibility.
that's true. Of course, another possibility I was thinking is it's maybe possible like it was supposed to come out in early 1995, but then it got pushed back to December.
Yeah, they probably didn't want it to like clash with each other or something like that, because they were probably like, you know what, which they were probably going to try and go out with this one first, and then they were like, no, let's go with the mask, and they changed their mind last minute. You know?
Yeah, but they didn't. They forgot to change the coming soon, or at least at the beginning of the video, they forgot to change coming or out in theater, make it out in theaters now, which would be more truthful depending on where this VHS opened up in.
What? We're on now. Space Ghost, Jim Carrey, right after the movie.
Welcome back to the show. So after our feature presentation, we were given the chance to see Mr. Space Ghost himself, who we were talking about earlier. The chance to interview Jim Carrey. And now, as Sherwin said, he wasn't really sure about Space Ghost as a talk show host at first.
Yeah, wasn't the familiar voice that I grew up with. But it'll grow on you, because it's like, hey, I remember the face, and you know, just gave it up. It's like, hey, you know what? Okay, this is something new. So okay, let's go with it.
Yeah,
Give it a chance.
So now let us watch our reaction to Space Ghost interviewing Jim Carrey.
The crazy thing is,
Are we on in Guam?
are we on in Guam? The second interview was funnier than Jim's, which was kind of bugged out. I would think it would be the other way around.
Yeah,
But
actually, I found that interesting in general, that it wasn't just Jim. It was the director. They interviewed the director as well. You wouldn't think they'd do that, especially with Jim Carrey movies. People tend to not think of the director. They tend to think of Jim.
Right. But this time around, that was good for him to be seen. And I'm glad they did do it, because they got to show that they had comedic writing skills at the time. And then as you listened, you saw how his voice started getting a little bit deeper. Yeah, so I think that then you kind of like eventually, as a you know, like an original Space Ghost fan, like, you know what, like I like talk shows. This is okay. I want to see Jim Carrey if I'm a Jim Carrey fan, and like, oh, this is the guy that directed it, and it happened to be funny, and I'm like, you know what, I'd probably take a chance to look at it, because I did get a chance to look at it later on, and it was cool. And then, but what was so funny about Space Ghost, when they asked the other guy, you're like, you mean sidekicks? He's like, no, those kids are their history. I was like, oh God. I like, the kids are gone, and shows them a little monkey. I was like, okay.
Actually, I have to wonder, like, how did they do this show? Like, were the actors told what, like, how much of it was improvised? How much of it was scripted? Were Jim and Chuck told what to say, or did they come up with the answers?
I think sometimes improvisation is one of the best things a director can let an actor, or especially a comedian. Because let's just say if an actor has comedic, you know, they're blessed with comedic timing, that's great. But one of the greatest actors, like we just mentioned Friday earlier, John Witherspoon, top notch at doing improvised work. So sometimes a lot of, and Tyler Perry, he lets his actors go for it. And even like when I worked with my mentor, we did a movie called The Starks Coalition. I did that, and and then lastly, I just recently did this movie that's going to be coming out next year. It's called The Last B-Boy, where I'm actually playing a Don Cornelius type by the name of Don Orpheus.
Mhm.
And and he's from the TV show Soul Power, and it's kind of like a tribute parody to Don Cornelius's Soul Train.
Mhm.
So when you're doing some things, you gotta like go with it. And I was given creative control, so I studied Don Cornelius. I listened to Billy D. Williams' voice, and I listened to Bill McCrary, who was a 2-time Emmy Award winning anchorman and media king. So I was listening to like all their voices were like really rich and everything. So I did my best to try and bring it, because a lot of people, there's some people that remember Bill McCrary did this commercial years ago where he said, "It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?" So it's like he had that rich voice too, like Don Cornelius and Billy D. Williams. So I kind of studied those guys to create this character, Don Orpheus, with a little bit of my energy to it. So yeah, but this, you never know, man. It's like sometimes they probably would just let them go. They probably had something scripted and just let them go. And then sometimes like, okay, we'll keep this, we'll keep that, we'll keep this, and then just mesh it together and then put it together, and then they had this little masterpiece that they have. Because after a while you see that Space Ghost, they're giving him a personality, you
Mhm.
know, which that's the basics that you need. Because it's like, when I was growing up watching Transformers, uh I tell people I haven't done this on stage yet, but I'm going to, when I talk about how as children you get emotionally locked into characters. Like I got locked into like Optimus Prime to the point where I thought he was a freaking real person. So, even because you're hearing a person's voice, I know it's cartoon, but if I saw somebody dressed up like Optimus, hey Optimus, and when the Marvel movie had the situation go off with the snap and people were dying and stuff, look, the comic book prepared them for that. But when it came down to us as kids and we went to go see the Transformers animated movie and Optimus died, I was traumatized. I came home crying like a nutcase. And my dad was, when he came in, my mother was like, "What's wrong with him?" He's like, because I was like, "I hate Rodimus, Optimus, Megatron." My mother's like, "What's wrong with him?" He's like, my father's like, "Yeah, some robot Optimus Prime thing died. He's crying about it. His name was Optimus Prime."
Mhm.
I was
Yeah.
all in my feelings. So
Mhm.
it's like just like the music and personality. Once you get that it's almost like psychological emotion.
Mhm.
I think that's the best way I can put it. It's psychological emotion that you get caught up into the character, and you have a love for the character. Like I met Adam West as a kid. I got to see the reruns of this TV show, and Adam West was kind of like matter of fact. I think Optimus Prime was a mechanical Adam West Batman.
Mhm.
He's a mechanical Batman, so you kind of got that love of those characters. And then when you see him in real life now, I got to really meet Adam West, and the little kid in me was like, it's Batman. So and then even you got to hear a little while ago. You heard Space Ghost call him Citizen Mask.
Mhm.
Only other person that ever said that was Adam West. He's like, "Good evening, citizen." So you would get that, but like I was saying, you get caught up, you get locked into characters
Mhm.
in a psychological and emotional way, just like how I love wrestling.
Yeah.
Wrestling tells stories, and it engulfs you in.
Mhm.
So yeah, man, I really enjoyed this, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. And before we end today's show, out of 10, what would you rate this VHS?
I give it a 10, man. Only because, especially with the laughter, with that Space Ghost gave with the director. Yeah, that was funny.
All right.
And then seeing Jim do his rubber face with the because he said he used to he would look in the mirror and practice and do all this stuff. And you get to see some special individuals
Mhm.
popping up, and we got to see Jim Carrey rise up, where he's a I think he's a high school dropout, if I'm not mistaken. And for somebody who that just shows you
Mhm.
use your talents, you use your skills, you use your mind you never know where that can take you.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you never know where that can take you.
Yeah, I will say that personally, I'd give it maybe a
Like
9 out of 10 just for the creepy Turner
9.
Entertainment
Oh,
logo.
okay. I'm not
And
going off that. I'm going off Space Ghost and Jim and
I know, I know.
yeah,
And
yeah, that building was a little. It was a little. Yeah, no, it wasn't a little creepy. It was a whole lot of creepy. Yeah.
yeah, and if my theory is right, that big flub saying Dumb and Dumber hadn't been in theaters yet.
There's probably, whoever sees this, if any of those employees that were working back then, it's like, I told you, John, somebody found out, that guy Kevin, he found out what we did. He found out. I told you somebody would do. It's like, Kevin, he's like, Kevin Higgins, detective, VHS detective.
Yeah, but no, besides that one little flub and the creepy logo that appears before many VHS tapes, not just this one. I think the ads I think the ads I think they knew their audience. Did the ads and the Space Ghost promo. And I think that they were good fits for who their audience was. I think it was smart to show the Dumb and Dumber trailer. I do find it a little weird there weren't just like a couple more trailers before the movie, but even then, that just means you get to see the movie sooner. So
yeah, and I know most likely a lot of times, which probably happens. I know little kids were sitting there like, Daddy, what's Space Ghost? Oh, it's a cartoon character that I used to watch when I was your age. But now Daddy's going to watch them on Fridays. So.
Yeah, but anyway, this was VHS Era. Thanks again, Sherwin, for coming on. And
thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I enjoyed the show very much. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me as a host.
You're welcome, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.